Donald Trump's defense team making their final pitch today. So what comes next? The Five co-host Judge Jeanine Pirro has been at the courthouse all day. She joins us now. Judge, just before we get into what the prosecution may or may not do in terms of its closing arguments, Washington Post is carrying something interesting that I guess happened just as court was closing. Somewhere in his closing argument, Todd Blanche suggested to the jury that Trump could go to jail if convicted. Apparently, Mershon blew up at him, according to the Washington Post, saying that was outrageous, Mr. Blanche. Someone who's been a prosecutor as long as you have, someone who's been an attorney as long as you have, knows that is highly inappropriate. Apparently, he's going to issue a curative instruction to the jury. Did you hear that, Judge?
I didn't hear it, to be honest with you. I'm stunned sitting here, and I was in there. But, you know, that's very simple. I mean, you give a charge to the jury, and you say, whatever the sentencing may be, or whatever my options may be, are not your concern. As I've told you from the beginning, you decide what the facts are, I give you the law, and you make a decision based upon the facts and the law. So, I mean, there's no need. The guy's very thin-skinned, this Juan Mershon, and there's no need to have a breakdown over it. But here's what I thought was so incredibly strong this morning, and that is that Todd Blanche spoke in very simple language and addressed everything he possibly could in his summation to the jury. It was simple. It was not histrionic. It was not over the top. I mean, some people, you know, if you have a child abuse case or a case, you know, an outrageous case, it's fire and brimstone. This is a case that is very dependent on how the jury sees the role of the falsification of business records. And Todd Blanche started by saying, look, this case is about evidence that was not proven. This case is about what you didn't hear. And he then went on to describe virtually every witness, and he made a great deal of effort trying to show how all the catch and kills were really not catch and kills, that they were simply, with McDougal, it was simply a question. She wanted to be on the cover of magazines. She didn't want anything killed. She wanted to write her own articles. And this guy who was, I don't know, the doorman, all he wanted was money. He didn't even want a story. And in the end, Stormy Daniels' story had already been out in 2011. So it was very precise the way he took everything down. And then at the end, he made it clear that there were people who were extorting money. And he talked about certain witnesses who got together, witnesses who were not called at this trial. Gina Rodriguez on behalf of Stormy Daniels, Dylan Howard on behalf of American media. And then, of course, the issue of Alan Weisselberg, the issue of Keith Schiller. All of these people are essential witnesses as far as I'm concerned. And if I were the defense in this case, and I don't know what the judge's charge is, but you have to get an adverse witness charge. The fact that Alan Weisselberg was not called as a witness and was certainly relevant, everything pointed to Alan Weisselberg being involved in that part of the Trump organization that was involved in the bookkeeping. That is something that should be used against the prosecution because, number one, he was within their control, and number two, he had relevant material evidence. And the fact that Keith Schiller was not called, when Keith Schiller clearly would say that the conversation on October 24th of 2016 was about a 14-year-old harassing Michael Cohen and not about his phone call with Donald Trump. I mean, all of the evidence was very clearly outlined for the jury. And I got to tell you, he had some great lines. You know, that Michael Cohen is the MVP of liars. He is, and he says, you heard a goat. The gloat, the greatest liar of all time.
You know, since that seems to be such a crowd favorite right now, Judge, we pulled the quote. We can put it up on the screen. This was Todd Blanche in the closing arguments right near the end. He's the human embodiment of reasonable doubt. He lied to you repeatedly, he told the jury. He's biased and motivated. Michael Cohen is the gloat. He's the greatest liar of all time. His words cannot be trusted. You cannot send someone to prison based upon the words of Michael Cohen. It seems, Judge, this was the big bang at the end of his closing arguments.
it was the Big Bang, and the whole summation was about how Michael Cohen was lying, how what he said made no sense, how the circumstances surrounding Michael Cohen's allegations were knocked down over and over again, and all those little facts that don't make big headlines in terms of what we do, but will make a big difference when the jury goes in and recognizes that, you know, we can't decide this based on Michael Cohen because we have this evidence that contradicts Michael Cohen. It was really an excellent summation, and it was done in modulated, tones, and I think he was very clear on where he was headed.
So I think that very last thing that that Sandra just alluded to, that he is the greatest liar of all time. You cannot send someone to prison based upon the words of Michael Cohen. That's probably what Judge Merchan took exception to. I think the judge thought that Blanche should have said you cannot find someone guilty based on the words of Michael Cohen. Merchan is ticked off that he thinks that Blanche was trying to engender sympathy for his client by suggesting that the jury could, for the very first time in history, send a U.S. president to jail. What do you think, Judge?
I happen to agree with that. I think that the idea that the centerpiece, he's always been the centerpiece of this conviction. He's got so many holes in him right now, and there are more holes as a result of the summation, because he was very methodical, Todd Blanche, in terms of talking to the jury. This was a lie, that was a lie, you can't believe this, you can't believe that. I mean, it's almost as though he shouldn't have been allowed to testify in the first place. And what I thought was brilliant was he said, he lied about all of this, but folks, he got on the stand and lied to you again. It's not just what he's done in the past, it's what he did in this courtroom after he swore to tell the truth. He took an oath. He looked at you. He said that we recognized that he was under oath and under penalty of perjury, and he still lied to you based upon the evidence, the facts, and the circumstances. They cannot convict based upon him. They cannot. We'll see.
So, Judge, at the end of all of this, all that matters are the jurors. And we just have to wonder what happens the next few hours and then on into tomorrow, what those instructions are. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm concerned about the instructions. I want those missing witness instructions, adverse witness charge. I'm curious. They say they gave us 3 options for the crime they were trying to conceal, and the jury doesn't have to identify or agree on which one. I mean, this is the sickest thing I've ever heard of. How can we be in the middle of a summation and not know what the crime is that they're trying to conceal, or what crime they violated? What is the felony that resurrected these dead misdemeanors? It is unheard of. I tell you this not just as a prosecutor, but as a judge. This is unfair. You've got to assume that Juan Merchan is not going to give the best charge to the jury in this case, but at the same time, the practical, methodical beatdown of all the facts by Todd Blanche may be good enough for them to say, you know what, this guy's a piece of garbage. We can't send someone to prison if that's what they think the option is. Or a former president, no less, based upon. And by the way, you know what I liked? The judge said, you can come back today, for the people's summation, but we'll take it into tomorrow if it's past 4:30. And the jury came back and they said, no, we want to go right through with this one. That tells me they're ready and they're not into this. Well, let's take a week off. I think they're ready to do their job. And I had a good feeling from that.
Yeah. As Carrie Kupek was mentioning last week, you'd think that if you're going to take a U.S. president, former U.S. president trial for the very first time, it better be something that is crystal clear. It's got to be like, we caught him taking $1 billion for selling nuclear weapons to some country, not for something as murky as this. Judge, great to see you as always. Thank you.
And no one, I got to tell you one thing, no one tied Donald Trump to that bookkeeping. No one.
Judge, awesome to have you on.
And they'll know that going into the verdict.
All right.
Thanks,
we'll
Judge.
let you get back in. Thanks, Judge.
Bye.
All right.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.